Everything's yay. Yeah, it's been a while, huh?
Yeah,
it's almost like I've forgotten how to do this.
Yeah, it seems to be getting further and further away, but we're definitely getting back into the swing of things.
Look at the little red dot.
Even there it is. That's a red dot. Yeah, even if the swing hits you in the head.
Should I take this off?
I don't know.
You know what? I'm not going to fuck with
it. Maybe don't mess with it.
No.
We're just messing with the camera, folks. We've got a brand new setup here with old stuff.
Yeah, it's old stuff. It's new stuff. It's stuff. It's very, I don't know.
Stuffy. Yeah, so I'm excited to get back to it.
Me too.
Report on all of the excitement.
There's been a lot of excitement in the air.
Yeah, so without further ado,
let's do it.
And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat X.
And I'm Mike. And don't you forget it.
Boy, do we have a show for you. Today on RMA, there is a chill in the air. The leaves are threatening to start falling like confetti on New Year's Eve, and countless snot-nosed, bleary-eyed children meander through schoolhouse hallways all across the country and across the pond. Today, we interview Katie Lain, an expert and adherent to the Sinclair Method. And we will have a great interview. She's going to tell us all about it, all this and more, today on a very special edition of RMA.
Hey. So here we are,
Yes.
back again after a bit of I wouldn't call it a hiatus. We actually are only 1 week off the schedule.
That's right, just 1 week.
Just 1 week. But we're back. It's fall, right? So now's the time when the kids go back to school and Mike and Nat go back to podcasting.
Yeah.
I don't know about every week.
I know, I'd like to.
I want to too, but already next week, you know where I'm going next week?
No. Where are you going now?
I'm going to Portland, Oregon.
Oh,
I'm
really?
going to go see the decriminalization of drugs in action.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to wander in the streets. I'm going to smoke crack with the locals. It's going to be a fabulous fucking time.
You have to do some kind of man on the street something. Maybe we should do or at least maybe we could do a Zoom call and you walk around and we can point out junkies. And
yeah, I mean, those folks would have no problem with me sticking a camera in their face while I narrate their drug abuse.
And
right?
here we have a gentleman smoking crack with his pants around his ankles. What do you have to say for yourself, sir?
Yeah, I don't have great expectations for Oregon, for Portland being any different than it was a couple of summers ago, but I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see how much of what I saw when I was there 2 summers ago was a result of the decriminalization and just the general sort of lawless atmosphere that exists in Portland, and how much of it was the pandemic.
Right. I mean, you don't hear much about it, or at least I don't.
Well,
for a while we were seeing stories about, the bedlam and how, just like what you were saying, but...
Yeah, I mean, but people move on, the news media moves on. They find another topic.
Yeah, they gave up. They're like, it's just going to be a crack then.
Before I forget, did you hear, you heard about that actress who got stabbed today?
An actress got stabbed?
Yeah, Reese
Witherspoon?
No, with a knife.
That's a terrible joke.
Isn't it, though?
Poor Reese Witherspoon.
You know who had Reese Witherspoon, even if she was stabbed with a knife, she had a better day than the Queen of England. That's for sure.
The Queen of England. Listen.
Too soon?
The Queen is dead. Long live the Prince.
Yeah.
Or is he a king now?
Well, I bet he didn't think he'd have to wait this long.
No. And his ears just keep growing.
Well, the force of gravity is also pulling the rest of them towards the English soil.
Yeah, so this
I feel sad for the Queen. I mean, she was a constant presence on the world stage for how many years?
Lived a long time.
She did.
Yeah, I was always perplexed at Americans who are who are obsessed with the royals. Nothing could be more anti-American than a Queen of England.
Yeah, for sure.
Besides like a Führer of Germany or something. Like a Queen of England, we had a whole war. We have a whole day we celebrate, the day we, revolted and made our own country. And here we are like, oh, the Queen of England. We should be cheering.
It was a long time ago, though.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
don't harbor any animosity for our British friends.
Yeah, I don't know. We love the Brits, but, I just, the Americans, a lot of us Americans love to talk about the royals. I mean, some of it is like we have the Kennedys, or we used to have the Kennedys.
Kennedys kept dropping at a rather rapid rate.
Showing my age here, but we have our own version of royal families here. And
the Trumps?
The Trumps are kind of in that, they follow the family, the Clintons.
Banana Republic sort of way.
Yeah. And so I get it. So we're, my condolences. I apologize for my callousness when it comes to the Queen of England, of course.
You weren't being callous, really? I didn't think.
Oh, okay, good. Then I stick by what I said, and nuts to the Queen and
nuts to the Queen.
Nuts to the Queen.
Is that some kind of weird American expression? Nuts to the Queen.
Don't they say that in America? No.
Nuts to you, sir.
So condolences in all of our British friends and listeners and subjects. I feel sorry that you have to live under the rule of what's his name, Prince Charles.
Yeah.
Enough about the.
Didn't
Queen.
he marry his mother? No, that woman, Camellia Parker Bowles.
I don't think she gave birth to him, but she certainly.
Imagine turning Diana down for that. I mean,
she must
not to get really into it, but
she must have talents that we don't know about.
Yes, hidden talents,
like a good cook, maybe.
Oh, I thought you were going somewhere else with that.
I was, but I tried to save myself.
Yeah,
and you brought it back, so thank you.
So, Nat, you know who we have to thank?
Who do we have to thank?
We have to thank our Patreon members for supporting our podcast.
Thank you.
What's the name of our podcast? Recovery in the Middle Ages is a listener-supported podcast. And the only reason that we're able to do this show, even as regularly as we do it with this fancy equipment that we have here, is thanks to you folks who drop a couple of quarters into the hat every month. And if you'd like to do that, if you'd like to help us, if you'd like to support a community recovery podcast, go visit us at patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages to learn more. There are some advantages to joining. For example, we're videotaping our interview with Katie today, and we will probably post this on...
probably about it.
Okay. I mean, it really kind of depends on what I can get done tomorrow.
This is going up somehow.
We're going to put it up on the Discord.
We were going to burn DVDs and mail them out to all of our Patreon members.
Can you imagine?
That's what we should be doing.
Yeah.
It's
a very Howard Stern sort of thing.
But Bongo Fiesta. Anyone remember that?
Yes,
I do.
That was in the era of Fartman.
Yes.
Classics.
Good old Fartman.
Yeah, but if you join up, you get a mug after a couple months or a sticker, depending on what level you join at. And
Noah designed the mugs, by the way. My son designed the mugs.
Yes, he's a talented fellow.
Yes, he is. Doesn't like school much, but...
Well... I don't know. Does anyone? Some people do, I guess.
Yeah, there's always that kid. Noah's got a couple friends where they just love school.
Yeah,
I can't wait to get back to him. Like, why can't you be like that? But I was never like that.
I know. I don't understand people like that.
Son. Yeah. That's my problem when Noah doesn't want to do something or is complaining about school. I don't disagree with him. I'm like, yeah, you're right. It sucks, and you probably don't need to know algebra, but you do if you want to graduate from the seventh grade.
You got to keep your eyes on the prize, and that's a problem. Yeah, it's a problem for people like you and me who tend to keep our eyes on the prize that's right in front of us.
That's right. The cheese in the trap.
That's right. Speaking of which,
yes,
I caught a rat yesterday.
You did?
Well, so I go meditate in my garage. That's my private space out there. Okay. I have a little couch. I also have a little cushion out there. I sit. I light a
picture.
I light incense. I light a little candle.
We got to do a picture.
Home, whatever. But it's really been bumming my sacred space because I hear this rat rustling around behind me.
He's messing with your zen.
He's messing with my zen. And I know it's a rat because I've seen his little bottom scoot under the door. I'm like, oh, the rat must have no bones in his body to scoot under the garage door like that. So I try to have a heart trap and it didn't work. The rat was smarter than me.
I've seen rat traps. I caught a possum in a rat trap once, but go on.
This was not a snap trap.
You know what I'm talking about, right? It's like a cage.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. He wouldn't go in it. I tried.
He's smart.
So I had to get poison.
Okay.
And I was a little worried about the dogs, getting into it. But so I put the trap back there, and then I went in there last night, and the rat was just sitting there as I opened the garage door, and I couldn't tell if it was alive or dead. It was just staring at me into my soul.
God, maybe it was meditating.
Maybe, but I poked it with a shovel, and it was indeed dead.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I felt terrible about it. But you know what? Like, what was I supposed to do? It had chewed through a bunch of tents. It had chewed through like half the shit in the garage. I can't live with the rat. Was not upholding its end of the bargain.
But did it have a family?
Well, hopefully they ate the poison too.
Well, what we always would say is, if you see one rat in the subway,
right,
it means there's a million you don't see.
Yes. So. I saw Ratatouille. I know how they live. They live in little groups, and they're
great chefs.
Right. They eat very small amounts of food, So I felt bad about that, so I tried to meditate after I disposed of the dead rat last night, and all I could think about was the dead rat. It's like one of those things, like if somebody tells you don't think about it,
don't think about the dead rat that you murdered with poison.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is ridiculous. We go to the Middle East and we have drones that we just indiscriminately kill thousands of people.
It's like playing a video game.
But when I kill a rat, I'm broken up about it for a day.
You've got too much compassion.
I don't know if that's it. I just I don't know. Karma, man. I don't want to come back as a rat next time.
No, karma. I've been thinking about karma lately.
Yeah?
Yeah. Maybe I'll tell you about it sometime.
All right. Well, if we're going to talk about karma, karma is a dangerous thought process to get involved in when you've done some sketchy shit earlier in your life, because you think that the bad things that happen to you are a result of the things that you've done in the past, when really
it's a previous life. Probably
it could be, but I really think you can really put on handcuffs on yourself on the way you think by being completely consumed with the shit that you did in the past and the effect that it has in the present. So I don't know how healthy that view is.
Probably not. This is a case of keep your eyes on the prize and don't sweat the details type of thing, and just keep doing your best. And
that's a lot of platitudes in one sentence.
I mean, that's how I would answer that. Just platitudes, bromides, just nonstop. But yeah, I mean, if you're always thinking about what did I do and how's it affecting me now? Yeah, you could. I could see that as being crippling. So that's why I have no conscience whatsoever. No matter what I do, I say that was for the best, and we move on.
Well, your past can inform your present, but it shouldn't dictate how you live in the present.
Those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, of course. I don't disagree. I'm gonna have to cut out that dead air, I think.
I'm deliberately staring into the camera.
Oh, yeah.
That reminds me of something.
I'm very self-conscious.
I wanted to say something.
Yes, I know you do.
Welcome to all the Monsters listening stateside, around the world, down the street, across the table, and right next door. Welcome all. Settle in, buckle up, and get ready for excitement, comedy, tragedy, intrigue, mystery, and so much more. Where can they find us, Mike? Probably right where they're listening. That's the first place.
That's the first place. That, in fact, is the best place.
Keep listening right on this channel.
Middleagesrecovery.com is up and running.
Yes, it is.
We had a little snafu earlier this month where we lost our email on our website for a couple days, but we ironed out the details. We're back. We're back in action, back in business.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
I had a great talk with, I don't know if this is stuff for the show, but I did speak with SoberLink at
oh, yeah.
G Money Smooth was kind enough to introduce us. And it looks like they really want to work with us, and we want to work with them. So you may be hearing more about SoberLink. I think it's a great just discussion topic in general. And this is not a free ad.
Did they pay for this?
They actually did not. So I shouldn't say any more, but pretty interesting. Grant's talked about his experience with SoberLink at some length. And it's that self-binding. It's very interesting. So I'm excited about that partnership, and I definitely want to do more shows. So pretty interesting.
I'm not going to let really the cat out of the bag, but I will say that Grant may be making an appearance on the show in the next couple of weeks to talk about his experiences with SoberLink, among other things. We want to get caught up with what he's been up to.
Yeah, one of the
with Shatterproof.
Besides Grant, also the great Erin Moore.
Oh yeah,
we haven't had her on a bit because we just haven't had a regular show.
We haven't been on in a bit. So.
I hope she's still interested in maybe doing a segment when we get back and going. So look out for that.
Yeah. Also, guys, you might notice, for those of you who are watching this on video, there's T-shirts behind me. These are only 2. I have a box of like 100 upstairs. So,
yeah, we got all these shirts. If for some reason the website isn't working, I should just do a test purchase just to see.
Just email me.
Mike R, middleagesrecovery.com.
Yeah. We'll get one right out to you.
Then
We're also join the Facebook group, Instagram, Twitter. Smash the subscribe button on YouTube, please.
Smash it.
I think that helps us somehow. And we are on YouTube.
Yeah, you can listen to us through YouTube.
I think what we should do, and I'm having our employee meeting now, I think what we should do is upload little videos. You know why I say that? I was doing some research for Katie Lain's appearance on the show today.
Yes.
She has a YouTube channel, and that's basically her entire thing is YouTube videos. And they're very good, and they're very concise, and
I think that
I'd love to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, YouTube is interesting because if your whole deal is YouTube, like there's really ways to make money after a certain number of subscribers, but it's kind of a hill to climb. But when you do hit that, it's pretty lucrative, I think. But so
I mean, you can just be sitting on the toilet and fire out a video.
That's what we should do. We should, a video of the
middle-aged toilet
talk.
Toilet talk
Tips with Mike and Nat.
Tips from the toilet with Mike and Nat.
It's a guaranteed success.
Glitter from the shitter.
I love it. So drop us a review. Did you say that? Because we have a
Drop us a review. Yeah. Great reviews will be read on the air, like the one that we're going to be searching for.
I have it.
To read.
Here it is.
You can do it on the Apple Podcast app or any of the other places. Leave us stars, leave us spangles, whatever.
Yeah, you need stars.
Things, Also, if you call us on the hotline at 516-888-6297, that's 516-888-6297. Operators are standing by.
They're waiting for you.
To listen to your tale of misery and woe, that you, to the way that life has grinded you down with alcohol and drug abuse.
I'd like a feel-good story too,
Oh, yeah. Redemption. It has to have an arc.
Yeah.
Don't call us from like the pits of despair.
Yeah, unless
of course you can.
You can tell us about your despair and how you got out of it. But
right. We need an act in 3 parts. A hero's journey is preferred.
Yes, please.
Right. And we'll play that on the air.
We will play it.
Anyway,
your story is a big one. We have a your story segment that we'll do sometimes if somebody sends us a really great story.
Yeah.
And today we have a combination, your story with a review.
Okay. I got an email after this, but
you got an email?
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is a long one here.
Yeah, do it.
Okay. This is a 5-star review from Randall. Okay. He says, I will start out by saying that I have never struggled with addiction myself. I have a brother and sister who has, and my mother-in-law lost her struggle with addiction last May.
Oh, no.
Her death was a turning point for me. I had always judged those that struggled with addiction, including my sister and brother. The problem was I knew nothing about addiction. I didn't know how it affects the brain and never understood why someone couldn't just stop using. However, I was doing some research right before her death on mental illnesses, and that's when I discovered that addiction, a.k.a. substance use disorder, was a thing. That's interesting. So, Rindle, you didn't even know that this was a real thing that people struggled with. Probably that was a medical condition. Interesting. My wife had nothing but resentment towards her mom because of her addiction. And my discovery and research after her death has helped my wife get through the loss of her mom, forgive her, and gave her pain some purpose.
I'm sorry.
I've only listened to a couple of episodes so far, but we'll be listening to more. I've started my own podcast, Stop the Stigma, if you want to know, which I'm relaunching soon to try and help others. And I have been listening to other similar podcasts, such as you guys, KDD and Dopey. Podcasts like you guys listening to stories actually researching has helped me understand SUD a lot more. So thank you.
What's KDD?
KDD is knocking doors down.
Oh, okay.
We were supposed to go on that show, but we never did.
I don't don't listen to recovery podcasts.
Yeah, I haven't. Recently.
You know why I'm sorry. It was a serious email.
What?
Are you still reading it?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
there more?
There's a little more.
Okay, go.
You want to save your apology for your...
yes, I'll apologize at the end.
Horrendous behavior.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll tell you why at the end. Go ahead.
Then he goes on to say, I do want to mention something. In your most recent episode, you guys were talking about enabling. One of you mentioned, Mike, I believe, that you needed that love and support to help get clean, not the tough love. I want to add something to that. From my research, there is no actual proof that enabling keeps addiction alive or anything of the sort. You guys keep it up. I will listen to more episodes when I get a chance. Thank you for what you do for the recovery community. Much love. And that's Randall from Stop the Stigma podcast. Thanks for writing, and I'm sorry you had to go through that, and I'm glad, that you were able to find some comfort with doing research. Sometimes just understanding something helps you to cope with it.
Yes.
And
thanks for writing, and check out that podcast, guys, if you could. Now, I broke out into laughter in the middle of the worst part of that because I realized that we're not actually videotaping any of this.
And here we are smiling at the camera.
We're looking like a couple idiots at the camera.
All right. Well,
we're going to start the video when Katie.
Right. So the video of the interview will be available, and I'll stop winking at the camera now because
that's ridiculous.
Thank you so much. Now there's an email. What time is it?
We kind of gotta. Let's put that hold that in abeyance, as we say.
In abeyance.
At abeyance. I'm going to read the intro to Katie because she's waiting in the green room, apparently.
All right.
Yeah. And I think the guests in the green room can hear you.
I don't know.
I don't know either. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about the Sinclair Method. And you folks may remember we did an episode on Claudia Christian's movie One Little Pill. Back about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, check out that episode too if you haven't.
We go into the Sinclair Method, which is basically a variety of medically assisted recovery, and Claudia was nice enough to email us or tweeted us after the show, telling us that we got a lot right, but we also got a lot wrong. And we were going to follow up with her and try and get her on for an interview, but it kind of fell by the wayside. So we were very stoked when Katie reached out and asked if she could come on the show. I guess Grant ran into her at a sober conference, and she was wearing a T-shirt that said, hi. Katie, can you see us? Do I have to start?
I think she's frozen.
She's frozen?
Yeah.
Oh, there she is. Wait, now there's two of her.
There's two Katies. Which one do we trust?
I don't know.
What I want to know.
They look the same. They're wearing the same clothes.
The one on the left hasn't moved in a few minutes. So
wait. Oh, shit. What did I just do?
I can't get this frog out of my throat. That didn't help.
Throw a fly down there.
Is that better?
What was that?
Yes,
Hi.
I think that's better.
It's clear. Hello.
Yes.
That's
Katie,
good.
I'm so glad that we finally got.
Are we frozen or are we not frozen?
No, you're not frozen. You're good right now.
Super. Sometimes, just turning it off and turning it back on. That works with cars and
the
TVs.
Tried and true method.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for agreeing to do this, by the way.
Yeah.
Appreciate
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Did you read her intro thing?
I didn't because we were just blathering on about other unrelated stuff. So starting the video camera is often a more professional way to do an interview.
Yes, agreed.
Katie Lain started on the Sinclair Method in 2017 after a nearly 10-year battle with alcohol. Right away, she began documenting her success with the method on her YouTube channel and has been part of the Sinclair Method community ever since. She has been a TSM coach and mentor for over 3 years and is a lifelong advocate of this life-saving method for getting free from AUD. So, welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages.
Yes, I'm so glad to have you on here. This is so cool.
I'm so glad to be on here with you guys. Yeah. I love your podcast. You can bring a sense of humor to such a dark subject. It's like an art, really.
Thank you. Yeah, the gallows humor knows no end here.
It's all gallows.
It's important, I think, and you've probably found this in when you're meeting with other people and you're going to recovery meetings. Just like you've all been through that same very similar dark times, and so it always helps. To get through it, just to laugh a little.
So
true.
For our listeners who did not listen to our episode on One Little Pill and Claudia Christensen, can you maybe just give a little sketch of what the Sinclair Method is?
Yeah. By the way, I want to say that's a great episode for people who haven't used the Sinclair Method. Like, you guys did an incredible job explaining it and the movie and all of that. So great job. For people who haven't listened to it, I definitely recommend listening to it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think Claudia wasn't as thrilled with it, though.
No, she was not happy.
She sent us a little note saying, "Hey, you got a couple of things wrong," but so it's all good.
Oh no, that's okay. Well, maybe I missed a couple of things.
Yeah.
No, so I'm sorry. The question you wanted me to tell you a little, tell your audience,
just a thumbnail sketch of what the Sinclair Method is.
Yeah. So, it's in my mind, it's a revolutionary way to overcome alcohol addiction, especially for people who can't seem to get sober, like myself. A lot of people come to this method who keep relapsing. They're trying to quit drinking and then they relapse over and over again. Or people who are still currently drinking, it can help them to reduce their alcohol consumption or ultimately go alcohol free. So it's a science-based treatment protocol that's been around for almost 30 years, but a lot of people still don't know about it. It uses a medication called naltrexone, which is an opiate blocker medication, not to be confused with an opiate. Naltrexone is non-addictive. It's widely available, very affordable. It uses that medication combined with alcohol. So people following the Sinclair Method, they continue to drink and they take the naltrexone an hour or two before their first alcoholic drink of the day. And over time, what happens through this method for most people, it has a clinically proven 78% success rate, which is incredible.
Wow, that's amazing.
I know. Yeah, I know. For most people, what happens when they drink on this medicine, it's a gradual process, but they essentially unlearn the behavior of alcohol use disorder. And the result of that is fewer alcohol cravings, easier alcohol-free days, and more of an off switch. If someone's continuing to drink, they can feel satiated after a couple of drinks. So that's a Sinclair Method protocol, essentially, is taking naltrexone an hour or two before the first alcoholic drink of the day and doing that compliantly and correctly over a long period of time, typically 6 months to a year or more.
Yeah, and it flies in the face of other recovery methods, right? Just like they're part of the method is you've got to drink, so you have that, I think they call it pharmacological extinction. I like big words. Yeah. And that's one of them. But so it's really counterintuitive. People hear about this method, and I think especially traditional recovery types, it's like anathema to them to actually say, yes, you've got to have a drink with the pill. So
right. And that's it's certainly not an approach that sort of dovetails in with the 12-step or AA.
Right, no. Because and it works,
Right. Well,
that's another way it doesn't dovetail with 12-step because it actually works.
That's the other issue, right? The success rate of Sinclair Method is 78%, and I've seen the success rate of 12-step range anywhere from like 5% up to like 15%, depending on who you talk to. But it's a really interesting and approach that should have much more publicity than it does. How did you come across it? How did you get started with the Sinclair Method? What's your story, I guess, is sort of a broader question.
Yeah, no, I know the success rate of it is just, it blows my mind. And, we're not anti-AA, of course. Like, I know people in my life who are sober through that, but it's just an alternative for those who that program doesn't work for, because it doesn't work for a lot of people. But like a lot of people, I stumbled on it by accident through the, now almost 4 million view, I think, TEDx talk Claudia Christian did, who is the actress who's, has the nonprofit and is a real advocate for it. I would always search online, like when I was hungover, like how to quit drinking or, what are ways to reduce my cravings? I was always looking for information and accidentally stumbled upon this video. And like a lot of people, when I watched her TEDx talk, I thought this is way too good to be true. That's what a lot of people think when they learn about it, because it completely turns a traditional kind of treatment on its head. Like, you can never drink again. And, you're got to call yourself an alcoholic and, just kind of work the steps and all of that. Again, not to knock it, but that wasn't something that was working for me. So stumbled on it. And, back then, that was in 2016. It took me a while to get naltrexone. It's more readily available now. Just, again, I know you guys talked about in your episode, a lot of doctors don't know about it. So I asked a lot of doctors and they're like, no, we won't prescribe it, and they just didn't know enough about it. So was that the resistance? That's where that was coming from? It was just a lack of knowledge, or was there some other reason that they weren't interested in pursuing that kind of a thing or prescribing that kind of a drug? It was a lack of knowledge, because I called like 5 or 6 doctors in my area. Like my GP refused it, and then I was just calling other random doctors. And I think my issue was I was calling like treatment centers, and they will prescribe it. I know you guys talked about getting prescribed Vivitrol when you leave treatment, so they'll prescribe it, but they'll give it to you with the recommendation to stay abstinent and take it daily. And so that's who I was primarily reaching out to, thinking, oh, a specialist will help, an addiction specialist. But the places I was calling, they require abstinence. They weren't open to harm reduction.
Right. Completely against it. And that's one of the things that, with the research we did, just like I've been around 12-step for a very long time, that the very minute you say you've got to drink for this recovery method to work, it's just, I feel like it's a hard stop. Like they just can't possibly, see that could be helpful. So yeah, that must be very difficult.
So, a lot of people are quite opposed to it. I went to an addiction conference, which is actually how I learned about your podcast, like earlier this year. And 99.9% of the people were just looking at me like I was crazy when I was trying to tell them about this method. And they're like, okay, we're going to keep doing what we're doing, but good luck to you. So, yeah.
Well, is Sinclair, it's not an abstinent method, right? I mean, if you want to continue to drink while you're taking naltrexone, you can. But do you sort of get to abstinence sort of through the back door, like as you go on, as the medication, as I understand it, it reduces your desire to drink because it sort of screws around with your dopamine and sort of fills that gap in there. I'm not really saying it very artfully, but it sort of takes away the compulsion, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it takes away. And I noticed this too when I first had the Vivitrol shot and they explain it to you and everything. And I was very interested in the way that it works, in the brain and everything. And really what it does overall, naltrexone being Vivitrol is just a brand name. Yeah. You really don't feel those cravings. And when I went on naltrexone, I didn't do it as a Sinclair method, but what I noticed was, because I did relapse, quote unquote, like when I took my naltrexone, I drank, but it's because I'm an idiot, not because, for any good reason. But what I noticed was I did have, a reduction in craving symptoms for alcohol. So I get it. I can picture how it feels to all of a sudden. And I still sometimes I'm like, I should be craving a drink right now. I just had a stressful day. But that feeling of that compulsion seems to, abate quite a bit.
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting because, obviously the Sinclair Method protocol, you're drinking on the medication, which is one way to do it. There's definitely research out there to show that it can help, like in the way you took it with, taken daily with abstinence or, the Vivitrol shot. But in Dr. Sinclair's research, he did prove that, his method is more effective than like a daily dose with abstinence because you're really targeting the reward from alcohol. And by doing that over and over again, it's reinforcing that alcohol does not equal this huge flood of endorphin reward. And to your question earlier of can you get abstinent through the back door? A lot of people do wind up going alcohol free, myself included. I started on this treatment, no intention to quit drinking. But over the course of the year, I just really fell out of love with alcohol, and it was easier for me to not drink. It just didn't occur to me to drink anymore. And after going 4 months of not drinking, I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to drink anymore. And that was 4 years ago. And what's great about it is it really meets people where they're at, because I think most people, they can't imagine quitting drinking. That's the hardest thing to even fathom. And so they start there. And a lot of people I talk to, they're like, I have no intention to quit. I'm like, that's great. Just try to, start by reducing. And for a lot of people, they get to a place, after a year or two on this method where they're drinking so infrequently that they're practically sober anyway. But when they're drinking following this protocol, they're taking the medicine and it's protecting them from relearning or, that typical relapse of one drink leads to a binge. As long as you continue on the medication treatment, you're protected and you're kind of relapse proof.
Yeah, it takes away that sometimes that subconscious, a good way to think about it when I'm explaining it to people, I say, think about it like muscle memory. So if you're practicing the guitar and you're working on a few chords that are tricky, the more you do it, the easier it gets to grab the chord. And so it's sort of a reverse muscle memory or giving you new muscle memory. So instead of your brain remembering, hey, last time I had a drink, I got this spike of dopamine. I felt good. instead of having that memory now, when you take it an hour before and then you have a drink, like we said before, you don't get that same reward, and now your brain starts to remember something different. And so you have a less chance or less occurrences of having that, brain craving.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
You do have that flood of endorphins and everything, and naltrexone blocks that. But how important is it to work on other aspects of your life at the same time, like using some cognitive behavioral therapy to sort of unravel the whole ideas in your mind that you have about alcohol, what you perceive that alcohol is doing for you in a positive way? I mean, is that part of the methodology?
It is. And I know you guys touched on that on your episode you did about the documentary One Little Pill. And it's absolutely crucial. Like, anyone with common sense would recognize that a pill is not going to fix like our relationship with alcohol, which is often very complicated. And, there's a lot of history and memory and emotions and things linked to it. So typically what we tell people is like the medication and the Sinclair method is a 50% of it. It's a crucial 50%. Like, I don't know that I would be where I am today without it, truthfully. But the other 50% is the, typical recovery work of lifestyle, habit, behavior change, really changing your relationship with alcohol at its core. Because I think, one of the things that, is a great thing, but it's also sort of difficult with the Sinclair method is you're still drinking. And so a lot of us, we have years or decades of, a type of relationship with alcohol where we're using it as a coping tool or just to numb out or to black out or whatever it is, or as a social lubricant or things like that. And so through this method, your desire for alcohol fades away, but people can still kind of use it as that coping tool. And so a lot of people I talk to, they'll tell me, I don't really have a desire to drink anymore, but I notice that I'm drinking more than I want to anyway. Or, I have 2 glasses of wine and I want to stop, but I finished the whole bottle. Like, why is that? And, that kind of goes back to the example of, if someone's eating ice cream, like if they're eating the whole tub of ice cream and they're not hungry, it's like, okay, well, there's some reason why they're kind of binge eating on the ice cream. So similar thing with, the Sinclair method. And that's why it's a long-term treatment protocols. It takes time to kind of shift those behaviors and find new coping tools. But what's great about this method is that it can be done gradually and you can still continue to drink. It's not like alcohol's abruptly removed and all of a sudden you're just like left bare to like figure all this out. Like, you could still use alcohol, right, but simultaneously gradually changing habits and things like that. So it's a really gentle way to go about it.
Which is a big sea change in the way you approach recovery versus a 12-step abstinence-based way, where you basically just pull that thing away, that thing that's given you all that comfort for all those years, and all of a sudden you're left sitting in a room with a bunch of people you don't really know, having to talk about your deeper innermost core and all that kind of stuff. So definitely would have been a more preferred approach for me had I known about it at the time that I quit. But
they put so much, I think part of it, and I've thought about this quite a bit, like what is the resistance? Like, why is this so difficult? But in 12-step, from my experience, it's very, it's a religious or a very, very spiritual God-based program. And what they do is they make alcohol like Satan, basically. Like, here's the good, your 12-step meeting, and here is evil. Alcohol or drugs. Yeah. And so it gets almost impossible to unlearn for some of the people who have been in it a long time, where you're telling them, the sky is red, it's not blue, and they can't come around to that because they've got this moral, it's like a moral problem. Like, alcohol becomes in itself evil and the thing instead of the behavior. And so I think that the Sinclair method is more, I don't want to say logical, but it's not looking at, it's science-based, right? And I think that's important. There's a lot of room for spiritual programs. In fact, that's most of what's out there, but I think there could be some room for a little bit of science, maybe.
Well, it may be putting the cart before the horse, right? Maybe you need to stop the behavior before you start looking at exactly what is going on.
But what if the drink is creating the behavior?
Well, I mean, the thing is, your brain is so screwed up, right? Like when you're
my brain,
that goes without saying. But you're in this constant cycle, right? And you made a couple of good videos on this that I was watching earlier today. Like when you're drinking, you look around and like you think that I think you used the example of you're walking down the street at night and you see everybody out there and you think they all want to drink as much as I do, right? But they probably don't,
Usually they didn't want to drink as much.
But I mean,
as
your
I
brain
did.
is just wired to like, it's like so pro alcohol. Like, you think everybody wants to drink, and the reason they're not drinking is not because they don't want to not drink. It's because they're barely holding it together because they really want to go out there and get wasted, right?
Yep. Exactly. And that's what, I didn't realize how much I was thinking about alcohol and how much it was just constantly on my mind until I started this protocol. Because what I realized was that I would drink pretty much 7 days a week, and I would start thinking about drinking at 11. Like, should I drink? Shouldn't I drink? Do I have wine? Do I need to stop at the store? And kind of that internal battle. And as I got going on this method, it was like, after a few months, I'd be like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't think about drinking today. And it was just like this surprise, essentially. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that works to repair. And you were talking earlier about, AA and the kind of belief system in there. And sometimes we never recommend, if someone's alcohol free and that is working for them, we never want to tell someone to start drinking.
Right.
But
you're not saying start drinking.
It crossed my mind today. I'm like, maybe I need to go on Sinclair so I can have a couple of drinks.
People get so mad at me for that. And I never want to do that. That's not what I'm promoting, but there's so many people that are struggling still, 35 million people in the US alone with alcohol use disorder. It's for those people that are struggling. And it does happen sometimes where someone's in AA and they're like, this is not working for me. I know I'm going to relapse. I'm still obsessing about drinking. And so they will transition to the Sinclair method in order to reach the pharmacological extinction, which does not mean abstinence, by the way. It just means the brain is essentially restored to the pre-addicted state. But yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, that your brain is restored to the pre-existing state, because they've done CAT scans on people that have been drinking for years, and there are structural changes in the brain. And I gather you're not saying that those structural changes necessarily go back to baseline, more that the way that you view alcohol vis-a-vis you has returned to something more approaching normalcy.
Yeah, it's just not because when we've drank, when we've craved alcohol and drank repeatedly for years or decades, it makes these super highways in our brain, essentially, where even just one thought of alcohol can lead us to drink. There's no space to even think about it. And so through repeated drinking on naltrexone, it breaks that down so that there's more space within us. So I haven't drank in 4 years. I still think about drinking sometimes, but it's not a craving. It's just a thought that pops into my head, and I don't have to battle with it. I don't feel triggered by it.
Right.
I feel completely free. I tell people sometimes, I've never smoked cigarettes, so I don't know what it's like to be addicted to cigarettes. And so I don't worry that tomorrow I'm going to go out and start smoking. It just doesn't even occur to me. There's no memory in my brain. And that's kind of what I describe with what happened with the Sinclair method. It's the addiction's kind of been erased from my brain. And that's quite a bit different than people who are, taking it one day at a time and, 452 days sober, nothing wrong with that. But I don't even remember the last day I drank, because I didn't mean for it to be my last day. It just kind of was by accident. And I know that I'm approximately, 4 years alcohol free. I knew it was the month of August. So, yeah, it's just, it's a true freedom from the addiction, and it restores your brain back to the state it was in before you had alcohol addiction. So, there's no preoccupation or craving or obsession with it.
I experienced that very same thing. I'm about 4.5 years without a drink. And I have those thoughts too. Even this week, I had a really rough week at work, and I would think to myself, not I want to drink, but wow, this would really be one of those times where I used to go get a drink, and so the same as what you were just describing. It's like a passing thought, but it's not something that's grabbing you like it used to grab me. So it's really amazing.
Do you mind if I ask, how long were you on Vivitrol for?
Well, I had a few different bouts with Vivitrol and naltrexone. So the first time I got it at the end of rehab, where that was part of the program, really. They really pushed everyone to get this Vivitrol shot before you were released. And so that first time I did it for about 3 months, and then I went back out. I was actually addicted to heroin back then too, so that was really great. That was my main reason for Vivitrol, was a heroin addiction. So that was great for that. But I wasn't ready to get clean off of heroin at that time. So I was still in addict mode, and, I just went back to it, but I stopped taking it deliberately just to use. So the next time I did it, the time where it worked, I was on naltrexone, the pill, which I was prescribed by an addiction medicine doctor that was at an outpatient that I used to go to. And I had just had a nasty relapse. Like I OD'd, I nearly died. And so this was my coming back from that, sitting with the doctor going, now what do I do? And he was like, well, have you ever tried naltrexone and Campril? He named these two drugs. And I said, no, I know naltrexone. I did the Vivitrol shot once. Long story short, I said, I'm willing to do pretty much anything at this point. Whatever this doctor tells me, I'm going to do it. The only thing I didn't do that he told me to do was exercise for 30 minutes a day. Maybe I should have done that.
I mean, there's just some things you can't do.
So I really stuck with it. I was taking my Campril and I took the naltrexone. It was about 6 months before I started to come off of it. But I could feel the difference weeks later or even less, because I was really and I was still going to recovery meetings. I was an outpatient. I had a probation officer, I think, still at that time. So I was very wrapped up in the recovery system, you could say. So it was on top of everything else I was doing. But after about 6 months, I started to the doctor said, okay, we can back off of these pills now. How do you feel? That sort of thing. And after another month or so, I came off of it and I never got that feeling and I didn't crave heroin. I didn't crave alcohol. I felt good, it was amazing. So about 6 months. That's a long answer to that question. Sorry.
Well, no, I appreciate you saying that because I just want to say real quick, I've been, obviously I have my own success with the Sinclair method and I've been such an advocate for it. And kind of in David Sinclair's research, he kind of compared, daily naltrexone with abstinence to the targeted use while still drinking. And he kind of equated the daily use to like a sugar pill, that it was basically really ineffective. So that was my lens for a while that I saw it through. But I've dug into more research because there are, papers out there that show that daily naltrexone with abstinence really can help with alcohol cravings. And anecdotally, I've heard from a bunch of people over the years who've had success with that, because even just thinking about drinking or being in an environment where you drink, just the anticipation is producing those endorphins and feel good hormones. So if you're on naltrexone, it's damping those. And so, it can work in that way. It is another approach.
So if you're on Sinclair, can you also quit smoking, sex addiction and eating disorders at the same time? Because it attacks the same dopamine pathway, right?
Yes, you can. I mean, it's not a guarantee, but that's what they told us. The doctor who was educating us on it pretty much said, and I did quit smoking too. They said all of your cravings will be dampened. Did you find that too?
See, so I remember you saying that on your interview about smoking, and I've always been told that it doesn't work in the same reward center as smoking. It does work for food addiction, gambling, porn. I've heard people lose their interest in coffee through it.
It's probably
for me, and marijuana addiction is another one.
Oh, marijuana addiction?
I used to smoke marijuana when I would drink, and I quit both of those through this method. So it really, it can work for those other addictions. And there's more and more use now too for there's a website that provides support for porn addiction, which I know is real prevalent, using naltrexone and another medication as well.
Have you heard of Campril too? It's the other drug that I took. Acamprosite, I think, is the generic name for it. And that's a pill you have to take 3 times a day, every day. But I don't know if my combination, this particular doctor was very up on me using these medications together. Maybe if I did Sinclair, I wouldn't need both medications. I wonder. But I definitely relapsed. The first time I was on Vivitrol, I drank on it, trying to get drunk. But obviously, I didn't really get drunk and it was weird. But maybe that's when I got my my pharmacological extinction. But it's interesting.
How important is the desire to stop? Because can you drink through it? Can you drink through it through the pill?
Yeah, you can drink through it. And, it's not even a desire to stop. It's just a desire to gradually change your drinking habits and drink less, really. So it's like with anything, if someone starts this treatment because their wife wants them to or something, they're not going to be, first of all, probably super motivated to take the pill correctly, because that's the golden rule. You have to take it correctly 100% of the time. And then, if someone's drinking, hard alcohol and they're taking shots, it can overpower the effects of the naltrexone. Or even people who are drinking somewhat slowly, they'll tell me, I get the off switch. I don't really want another drink, kind of like how we're full, but we keep eating anyway. So they keep drinking anyway. And that's really the signal to, address the underlying reasons of why someone is drinking in the first place and work on new coping tools and things like that. So it's not like, foolproof 100% of the time it's going to work. If someone's really, not ready to make that change in their relationship with alcohol, that's still a process, even with the Sinclair method. But in my opinion, the Sinclair method makes it much easier to do. But sometimes I've seen people, they start on it and they're like, okay, this is working too well. I'm not quite ready for that yet. And they put it on the shelf for a period of time, but at least they know that it's there when they are ready.
So how long did you take naltrexone, or do you continue to, if you're not drinking, I don't know, do you keep taking it, or how long did you stay on naltrexone before, you decided that you would be safe to stop trying drinking and taking the pill?
I did it for about a year. So I don't take it anymore because I don't drink anymore. And I was taking it, and I still have some though, because I'm like, well, maybe I'll drink again one day, but I just haven't had the desire to.
Reservations.
But I took it for a year and took it, I started the treatment while I was drinking pretty much 7 days a week. And I remember my doctor saying, try to drink every day for the first 30 days, because the idea is to help your brain kind of lay that foundation of pharmacological extinction with enough repetition of it. And I was really excited about that. But I remember I know a weekend I was like, I don't want to drink today. Like, this is a miracle, which I was happy to drink 7 days a week, back then, but started it drinking every day. So I was taking it every day. And then just gradually over the course of a year, I would shave a day off a week, where I was like, oh, I'm having 1 alcohol-free day, then 2, then 3. And got to the point after a year on the method where I was drinking about once a month, 1 glass of wine once a month, like with dinner or something like that. And that was the point where I just stopped drinking. And so I haven't taken it in 4 years either. But that's kind of the beauty of the method too. You only take it when you're drinking. So for a lot of people, they're taking it pretty infrequently the longer they're on the method.
Do you have support groups like peer-to-peer Sinclair Method? Because if it's difficult for you to, AA is great because it's everywhere, no matter what country you're in. Now, if you're doing the Sinclair Method, the Sinclair protocol, I like the way you put that. Is there a place where you meet with other people who are recovering from Sinclair? You will, because you talk about it, besides that, but if the average person who goes on the Sinclair Method, what are the support options for that?
Yeah, so it's true. If someone tries to go to AA with this treatment, it's not really well supported. Typically, if people are benefiting from AA, they just won't tell people that they're doing the Sinclair Method. I've heard some kind of bad stories of people that were honest with their sponsor about it. So AA is not great, but actually there are free online TSM meetings. If you go to tsmmeetups.com, that was something that I actually started with Claudia Christian years ago. We started just having these online meetings, and now they've evolved into meetings every day that are run by volunteers. I don't run them anymore. I kind of handed them over. But that's a free resource for people. They're peer led. So, you're getting that peer support, and they're done through Zoom. And then, I run Thrive Alcohol Recovery, where we have a whole online comprehensive program that guides people through it step by step. There's also free Facebook groups as well if people want that level of support. Getting support, like we kind of talked about earlier, is really important. I was honestly one of those people that thought that a pill was going to fix my drinking. I just thought, oh, I like to drink, I'm a party girl or whatever. And when I started on it a few months in, all this stuff started to surface that I'd been numbing for 10 years. And I was like, okay, I actually need to get some more support here. And that's where sometimes people will maybe stop doing the method because they're not, again, ready to make those changes. But I started going to a therapist and, doing the actual recovery work, which is, still required as part of this treatment.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. When you first started on the Sinclair Method, what did the rest of your recovery look like? What was going on in your life? Did you try to go to 12-step, or did you, what did you do to take care of those other issues, the underlying issues?
Yeah, I didn't go to 12-step because I tried AA years earlier and went twice and was like, this is not for me. I just didn't want to go to that program again. But I started the treatment honestly naive, just thinking, oh, this pill will help me drink less. But as I was making progress on it, all this stuff started to surface. And I really started to see how my life was built from the perspective of someone who had an alcohol addiction. So there were all of these things in my life that I had to change, just relationships and jobs and routines and things like that. And so for me, I started taking personal development workshops and just reading a lot of books, taking courses online. I'm kind of an introvert and like to do stuff on my own. So it was kind of my own little piecemealed recovery journey, I also did start seeing a therapist who really helped with a lot of that stuff. But, sometimes what I see with people on this method is, like I said, like they have these kind of things in their life that are driving them to drink, whether it's relationships or jobs or things like that. And, if someone's not really changing these things in their life, they can, drink more than they want to or not see the progress that they're after on the Sinclair method. And that was true for me. I had a job that was like, I hated that job and it was causing me to drink more than I wanted to. And so part of this journey was like leaving that job and figuring out, who I was when I, wasn't someone who had an alcohol addiction. And I've heard people say that before, that's like a terrifying thought of like, who am I when I don't have this addiction anymore? I'm sure, you guys can relate to that too. Anyone can relate to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But the people who have the most success in recovery are people who take a multidisciplinary approach, and they do the therapy and they do the spiritual stuff, whatever that means to them. And they engage in science-based, evidence-based treatment. It's a huge part of recovery. It needs to be a bigger part of recovery. To that end, like, what do you think? We're using the term alcohol use disorder, which really makes me feel good because I cannot stand the term alcoholic. I think it's extremely limiting. I think there's all kinds of issues with it. Yeah. And I mean, what do you think? What do you think of that idea? Alcohol use disorder is a spectrum, right? You have people who, maybe have a couple of drinks a night, but are still obsessed about alcohol to the point where it's like governing their lives, and they want to.
You plan your day around it.
You plan your day around it. You have to have it every day, and then at the other end, you have the stereotypical drunk under the bridge, right? Yeah. Is there a type of drinker for whom the Sinclair method is more effective on either end of the spectrum?
Not necessarily. I've seen it work for extreme alcoholism where someone was drinking a half gallon of vodka every single day for years. And then also more like the mild, the person who has only 2 glasses of wine every night, but like you said, they're like kind of obsessing on it and it's an issue. It can work for anyone along the spectrum, and people who are more severe cases, this method can help them reduce in a way where they're, reducing slowly enough so that if they're, concerned about withdrawal effects, it can minimize those. Sometimes they work with physicians that will put them on other medications that may help with withdrawal. But no, I really see it work along the spectrum. And I think the biggest factor is like, again, whether someone's really ready to make that change. I've had clients where they're not drinking a ton, but they're really attached to their wine ritual every night, for example. It's a really common one for people. And so, they're not starting it in an extreme case, but like they're having a really hard time letting go of the habit. And then others, I know of a gentleman who he was the example, drinking a half gallon of vodka a day. And in 4 months, he was like drinking 1 beer once a month, but he was like so motivated and just super engaged in the treatment. But no, it can really work for the spectrum. And even in the studies that they showed, because it's got the clinically proven 78% success rate, a portion of the people it didn't work for were people who just weren't taking the medication correctly. And so that is like one of the more common challenges that people have, because you can still get drunk, you can still black out, you can get intoxicated, all of that, but it's just not the same like euphoric buzz. Right. So people sometimes miss that. And so they, again, they want to numb out. So they skip naltrexone, and that just really throws it off. Like even if they're skipping the dose once in a while, they're never going to get to the pharmacological extinction if they're giving their brain that reward reinforcement, even just on occasion.
I think another thing that's great about Sinclair and medically assisted recovery is it validates the idea that you don't have to hit some kind of a rock bottom before you get help for an alcohol condition, because studies have shown and the science shows that early interventions are end up with better results, right? So the person who is just a casual drinker who still considers their relationship with alcohol problematic, they may go to AA and they may be told,
like, I'm not one of these.
Come back when you got a real problem.
I heard that in the rooms before. Yeah, come back when you got a real problem.
Which I think is incredibly harmful, and it keeps a lot of people from getting help who could potentially be getting help at an earlier state.
Or the one of us or one of them type of thinking. Like there's us, and then there's the normies, or sometimes we call them civilians.
Yes. I cannot stand that dichotomy.
Because
I think it's extremely unhelpful.
It leaves people out who probably would benefit greatly from cutting down on their drinking just because they didn't kill somebody in a DWI crash. It's like you don't. The way I see it is the only rock bottom that matters is death. everything else you can come back from.
Right.
So as soon as it's starting to mess up your life or your health, or you just don't like the way you feel, it should be, easy for anyone to feel good about doing something like the Sinclair Method.
It should be normalized to the point where you can walk into your primary care physician, say that your relationship with alcohol is getting a little dodgy, and
like
they
smoking.
They have Chantix or whatever that stuff is.
Why can't it be like that?
Yeah.
And which leads me to my next question. When I watched One Little Pill, I remember Claudia talking about how she had trouble just getting naltrexone prescribed. Now, part of that is because it's just ignorance, or the people, maybe not ignorance, but they're not educated on it. They've never heard of it. Even addiction medicine doctors, because in my time in the system, so to speak, I dealt with a lot of different types, psychiatrists, clinicians, all different kinds, and different doctors. And only when I got that one doctor who finally prescribed that to me, I had never heard of Campril. I knew naltrexone, but I only knew it from my heroin days. Nobody ever approached me about using naltrexone or Vivitrol for drinking. It was always geared towards. So when I was first introduced to Vivitrol, it was 100% focused on opiates. And I only learned about the drinking thing like that when I read the Wikipedia on it. It was like, what is this medication I'm taking? And it said originally developed, to help drinking. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And so until that final doctor, Dr. Belkin, I can't believe I remember his name, when he finally said to me, this will help with your alcohol cravings, because that's what I was really struggling with. Yeah. It's a lot easier for me to not go and buy heroin because I'm not usually around a situation like that, just because of my life.
You can't get it at 7-Eleven.
You can't get it at 7-Eleven, but I can go to Chuck E. Cheese for a birthday party, and I can get a Heineken if I want. And so
I thought you were going to say you could get heroin from Chuck E. Cheese. I was like, wait a second.
Only certain ones. You have to be in the know.
You got to go behind the dumpster.
Right, and the rat will meet you back there.
Yeah. So do you feel like it's easier today compared to when Claudia made that documentary? Are doctors more educated, I guess, is my thing I'm asking.
Well, it's easier. Even when I started on it in 2016, it was really hard to get it. It took me a couple of months. But it is easier today, not necessarily because doctors are more educated, but because there's more providers like telemedicine doctors that specialize in it, and they will prescribe it. Like here in the US, we work with doctors in all 50 states that you can meet with through Zoom for a couple $100, and they'll get you a prescription for naltrexone. And sometimes it's covered by insurance. Now, if someone goes to their GP and asks for it, I would say there's a 50-50 chance of whether or not they'll prescribe it. Some are really open to it and on board, but others are just like, no, it's not my specialty. Like, go see a specialist.
Right.
So that's the challenge. But it was interesting because I was at an addiction conference and I was talking with an addiction specialist who's been in this field. He was an old man. He's been in this field for decades, and he's known about naltrexone for alcohol since the 80s. And I was like, well, why hasn't it taken off more? Why isn't it more well known? And he said, well, we just believe that abstinence is better. And so we don't really want to promote a harm reduction approach. But if you look at the failure rate of abstinence programs, it's like 80% or more of people relapse in 6 months after treatment. And so I'm just like, that is crazy. But that's kind of the consensus. And even some doctors that prescribe naltrexone for the Sinclair method, they still want their patients to be abstinent. Like they're like, okay, you can do the Sinclair method, but you have to be abstinent. And that's a real conflict for people. It's confusing, and it breeds guilt. Like, well, should I try not to drink? What am I doing here? So
it totally breeds guilt. And it's the same thing with the abstinence programs, and even like Prozac. You were talking about how some people are on the Sinclair method, they don't tell their sponsor. Well, there's people who I've heard, who have mentioned that they're on Prozac and they're afraid to tell their NA sponsor. But I think that's a general attitude that, medicine bad, God good. And never the twain shall meet, so it's very hard for somebody to get around it. Even a doctor who should, by all rights be a little bit more logical and science-based, they still have that ingrained, it's from their whole life of course you're not going to drink on a recovery method. What are you, nuts? They just can't possibly wrap their mind around it.
Well, AA has had a monopoly on the recovery scene for so long that the assumptions that are baked into that program are baked into the recovery writ large.
Right. And they were reflecting society, I think, at large. And
yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having spirituality as a part of your recovery, but it shouldn't be like the required part of your recovery. You shouldn't have to slot that into your recovery for it to work, for recovery to stick.
I agree. And that actually, I had one question I wanted to ask you. I'm glad you brought up spirituality is, you didn't talk much about your spiritual practices, if you have any. And I know that the Sinclair Method doesn't revolve around that, but I'm wondering, do you have a spiritual side to Katie Lain? Is there meditating? Are you praying? Are you going to church? Is there anything like that that's also helping you?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm glad you asked that. When I was on the Sinclair Method, I was very much like, I was in like the New Age, which not to knock that, but that was that I was in for 10 years, like Buddhism and stuff. But 2.5 years ago, I actually became a Christian. Like that completely changed my life, like becoming a believer in Jesus Christ, which that was like, I used to make fun of believers, like make fun of people that follow Jesus, like secretly. But yeah, I'm kind of the last person who I thought would become that, but that's the path I've been on. And I would say, like you were mentioning earlier, I think, I read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl when I was on the Sinclair Method. And I think that was one of the most profound books I read, because drinking was my purpose. That was where I got meaning out of life every single day for my whole adult life, essentially. And so I realized that a part of my recovery was really about finding meaning and purpose in my life. And, I've worked with people who are hardcore atheists, or, they're all along the spectrum. And so I know faith and spirituality is not for everyone, but a lot of what he promotes in his book and talks about is, having that meaning. And so I think that whether or not someone's open to spirituality, like that sense of meaning and purpose in life is something that is fundamental to recovering from an addiction. Do you agree? Or I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, it's actually bringing up a whole lot of thoughts that I'm having over this, because I'm also a Christian. And so the conflict, and maybe you can, relate to this. Now, you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, and part of that is the belief that God, Jesus, whomever, can do anything, basically. Literally could do anything. And so it was hard for me at first to just be like, you know what? Yeah, God is great, But, if you ask God to move a mountain, you should bring a shovel. You got to do some work. So I always had a little bit of conflict internally with, how can I say on this one hand, to my Sunday school kids, that, pray to God for he could do anything in your life. And on the other hand, I'm saying to myself and other people, yeah, we don't really need God in this situation. Like, you can do it without it, and let's not focus on it too much. So I'm definitely conflicted in that. But I mean, I've learned how to parse it and, separate them. But, I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you have that kind of conflict too, where you're like, I want to be able to say, hey, pray it away. That's all you need is prayer. But I don't think that just comports with the reality of, what we go through as people who are addicted.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because for me, I quit drinking before I came to God. So like I believed I was God in Buddhism. And again, not to knock anyone, but my beliefs were just like so completely different than they are now. And so, he wasn't a part, but looking back, I'm like, he was there all along. That's like the perspective I have now. But with the Sinclair Method particularly, we have a lot of people that come to us and say, I've been praying for an answer and God led me to this, or she showed me this. And so I believe that he does use tools to help people. There's a lot, he can use anything to free people from whatever. And I've also met people who the Sinclair Method didn't work for, and they were able to literally like lay it at the cross and give it up, and God like completely healed them. And so I think he can do either way. Like, my understanding biblically is like, it really comes down to faith. Like, Jesus went into towns where he couldn't heal people because they didn't have faith, or if someone's still really, attached to the addiction, or they're getting something out of it. And, it's much more complicated than that, I think. But, I do believe that, God can use anything, whether or not someone's a believer in him or, believes he exists. I think he's, using all things for good.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's like one analogy I would use sometimes is, you can believe in gravity or you don't have to. But either way, when you step off your roof, you're going to hit the ground, So just because you're not acknowledging something doesn't necessarily mean it's not working. I run into in this, on this side of recovery that we're in, which is, it's all different ways to, it's not all spiritual. I come across a lot of people, and maybe you do too, who have such an anger towards any kind of religion. The minute they see God, it's already, okay, if you're a salesperson, it's like, I have an objection now I have to push through because they're poisoned on the word God. So it's hard for me because I'm agreeing with them in the sense that, yeah, you had a very bad experience with a church or with someone who was religious. Yes. Okay. That was bad, but you need to, you have to look at it from a little different perspective, and it's not such a horrible thing. It's just being used in a horrible way.
Well, I don't know. I think people's experiences are as varied as there are human beings. And,
right.
And you're never going to have a group of humans agreeing on whether God exists. What place does God occupy in the universe? And I don't think, it's anybody's position to tell anybody else what to think in that respect, which is why I find like having it as like a frontline part of recovery, like it is in a 12-step group, to be like the opposite of helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be detrimental. And
I think if people are not, ready to accept the idea of even deism, even the fact that there is some sort of force in the universe, then trying to like pigeonhole them in there, trying to make, the doorknob God or a group of drunks God.
Good orderly direction.
I think it's a terrible idea, and I don't think that should have any part of there should be any part of that in recovery. My spirituality's definitely evolved since I've stopped drinking. I was always a Buddhist, but ever since I was in high school. But I've definitely evolved in my thinking about whether there's some sort of universal thing that's outside of myself, and I'm into Zen, which is not really traditional Buddhism. So I don't really need to have a belief of God one way or the other to practice Zen, if that makes any sense.
But you still dodge the priest when you go for walks with your wife.
Well, I'm a social Catholic because of other reasons, but that's how I was raised. Like a kid in Catholic school, I had to get him baptized in order to get in. It was this whole thing. So
how can you deny God's place in your life?
I don't deny God's place in my life, but I don't believe there's just one. I think Krishna is God. God's God, whatever. There's plenty of gods. It's just how you approach them. Allah is God,
Many names, one light.
Yeah.
So that's great because I don't usually get most of the people I talk to in recovery. It's either, and that's why I hate that 12-step has God, and they're the ones that are besides Celebrate Recovery. But they've got God, and if you're not doing that, somehow now I'm anti-church or I'm anti-God, and nothing could be further from the truth. But as we've discussed, we're believers in, that this universe created by what we believe is God, operates under certain physics and laws and things, and so we ought to operate within that. So thanks for humoring my spiritual inquiry there.
Well, and I appreciate what you're saying too, because if God is forced on people, nobody wants to be forced to believe in God. And like you said, I've heard people call a coat hanger God because they're like, this is ridiculous. I don't believe in this. And my husband's not a believer, and so that's very fresh in my experience. Right. So it's a mystery, and it's a beautiful question, and it's I feel like we could talk about that for a long time. But it's I do encounter a lot of people who are more science based and so absolutely opposed to God, which makes the Sinclair Method a great option for them. And it's kind of a mystery for me too, because I didn't believe in God until after I was sober. So I was like, what is that all about? I'm still trying to come to terms with that.
Well, you're seeing clearly now.
You also, there's a lot more space in your head that's not occupied by thinking about, booze all
Alcohol
the time.
Was my God before.
Well, it's funny, but it's kind of true, alcohol was my God too.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us about what you're doing on YouTube and all of the things that, because we're getting to the part of the interview where we promote what you do. But what are you doing? It sounded like you said you have clients and you're working with people on the Sinclair Method in recovery. So
Thrive is the name of your group there.
Tell us all about it.
Thrive Alcohol Recovery. So I started a YouTube channel. I was honestly just going to make one video to be like, hey, this works for me. But it kind of just evolved into a YouTube channel where I shared my kind of documentation of the journey month by month, and then interview people as well, and still put videos out regularly. We host Q&A sessions a couple times a month and things like that. So on YouTube and all the social media channels, on TikTok as well, like we're on TikTok pretty regularly as well, bringing a lot of people to the Sinclair Method from TikTok. There's a lot of people on recovery on TikTok, in recovery. I didn't realize
really
that.
Interesting.
Yeah. I always thought it was like a tween platform, and I created a TikTok, and I'm like, oh, it's not at all. Are you guys on TikTok?
Yes,
we are.
I am.
I've learned to avoid it.
We are not, but I am.
Oh, you're on TikTok because my son's on it constantly, and it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
So I'm morally opposed to TikTok and everything it represents. But having said that, I think we should probably do something on TikTok because
I know
it's ubiquitous.
I was pretty. Sorry.
It's everywhere. So we got to get on that. So that's really cool, and you meet a lot of great people out there. You get a lot of people just. Who are curious. I like this word, sober curious. And it has that interesting connotations.
And they don't know, like you guys were talking about earlier, it's like if people think that I thought the AA was the only way, and like calling myself an alcoholic and going to meetings and never drinking again, I was like, I wasn't, like that didn't appeal to me. And I've heard people say like, oh, if I would have known about the Sinclair Method 5-10 years ago, I would have fixed this problem then. But I thought that this was my only option. But, so, and then with Thrive, we have an online program that, is the recovery piece of the Sinclair Method. We work with doctors across the US and Canada and a few other countries who prescribe it. And then we have a team of coaches and a whole comprehensive program that really guides people through it, step by step from the very beginning of how does the method even work and what am I doing here, all the way through to like, what does life look like once you reach extinction and changing habits and things like that. So I've been a coach in this field for 4 years and really had the privilege to work honestly with like hundreds of people over the years, one-on-one and both in group. So pretty well versed in the method and love to support people through it.
Oh, that's so great.
So if somebody wants to find out more, how would they reach you?
They can go to our website, thrivealcoholrecovery.com, and our social media is linked on there. We have videos that explain the method and information about our program and just other resources. We have a couple free video courses on there too, just for people like, if they're like, is this method right for me? We have a course on that, mistakes on the Sinclair Method, and a few other free courses as well.
Yeah, definitely check out some of those videos. They're entertaining and informative as well. So if somebody wants to start working with you, can they get through one of the doctors you work with, can they actually get a prescription via like a telemedicine sort of situation?
Yeah, that's actually exclusively who we work with, our telemedicine doctors. And we have doctors in all 50 states as well as Canada and a couple other countries. We're working to expand. Like there's been a lot of interest from people in Australia. So it's much more difficult to get the medication over there. So we're kind of working to figure out a more seamless process there. But for at least the US and Canada, we're covered. And so a lot of people, when they learn about this method, they don't necessarily want to talk to their GP about it because they're like, I don't want them to know I have this problem, or I don't know what they're going to say. So we work with doctors that really specialize in it, and you can meet with them through phone or video and get a prescription pretty quickly. For most people, the medication is pretty benign for most people. If someone has a liver disease, the doctor may do a screen and see if their liver is healthy enough because the medication is processed through the liver, but it's a pretty safe medication for most people. So
is my blood pressure medication,
Processed in the liver?
Yeah, everything is processed in the liver.
The poor liver it's a hard-working organ.
Yeah, mine is not happy with me. But last 4 years, it's been pretty happy, but last thing I want to ask you, unless you had something other major that you wanted to.
No, I feel
like we're keeping her for a while here. I
love the conversation.
Yeah,
let's go for a few more hours.
What is the final word from you on powerlessness? AA it's a big stopping point.
That's a good question.
For you, for a lot of people. They say, I'm powerless over alcohol. My life has become unmanageable. But I know Mike has got a big problem with the powerlessness.
I don't turn the power over.
So is this a powerless program, or are we taking our power back? Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's more, and honestly, I think that's one of the things that prevents people from doing AA as well. I know if it was true for me, I was like, I'm not powerless. Like, that's not very helpful. I can understand why it would be helpful, because if people believe in God and, they're surrendering that to him, that's, one way to go about it. But with the Sinclair Method, the term I used a lot was like, I'm empowered over alcohol. I have my power back over alcohol, to where, it's such a freeing feeling to go to a party and know you're not going to get blackout drunk and make a fool of yourself. You're going to have a couple drinks and enjoy yourself and drink like a normie, and go home. So through this method, it's not about powerlessness. It's actually about gaining your power back over alcohol, which is where the freedom comes from. You're not at the whim of like your alcohol cravings and just trying to moderate and force yourself to, have control or force yourself not to drink, but you really get your power back. And it's a gradual process. It's not an overnight fix, but it's an incredible journey. And, I have a lot of success stories on my YouTube where people can go and see, these normal people who, had alcohol problems and they got free from it through the Sinclair method, whether that means they're sober now or they're, drinking more moderately.
Great.
Awesome.
And so your YouTube channel would be just search under Katie Lain, or is it under Thrive, the Thrive brand?
It's under Thrive. It's called Thrive Community. But if you search my name or if you search the Sinclair Method on YouTube, like you'll see my face come up. I have a couple hundred videos on there, so you'll see me and that will take you over to the channel.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Yes.
And do you have anything else while we've got her? Because who knows if we'll ever get her back here after this one. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Katie. It was so great to speak with you and to meet you.
Yeah, and it was so nice to meet you both too, and like meet people because being an advocate on social media, sometimes I get people who are super dogmatic, like we were kind of saying, like there's only one way to recover, and so it's really awesome to be on a podcast where you guys are kind of even talking about this, even though you didn't use it yourself. So thank you for being open-minded and willing to share this information.
Well, our philosophy has always been the best recovery method is the one that works for you. So,
that's a good one. True. Did you just come up with that?
No, we say that all the time.
We do?
We do.
Okay, yes, we do. We say it all the time. Right. It's on all of our merchandise.
We're doing the same show, right?
It's true. Yes, of course.
All right, Katie, thank you.
Thank you so much.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was good. What?
I'm just looking at myself in that video. Yeah.
The video part is over. We don't have to look at the camera anymore.
Okay.
But you should put the cams back on because we're still actually talking.
Yes.
Unless you want to take a break.
No, we don't have to take a break. So thank you so much, Katie, for enlightening us. She was just really like clear-headed, interesting, articulate, interesting ideas, ideas that work. And so check her out, please, on Thrive Recovery.
Links in the show notes, folks. Links in the show notes.
And check her out on YouTube.
Actually, let's take a little break and come back.
Will we be right back after these words?
We'll be right back after these words. Did you guys like that?
Yeah.
You want to hear more guests like Katie? Because if you do, drop me a note at mike@middleagesrecovery.com. I have a couple of things lined up, a couple of interviews for the next couple of shows. So
yeah, we got great stuff coming up. I was just going to say something, and now I've completely forgotten what it is.
Are you going to DopeyCon?
Yeah, I will be at DopeyCon. It's October 1st at I forget where it is. It's in New York City. Yeah. Church of the something. Right. It's one of those. The Assumption or like... the
Assumption.
Something.
Church of the Assumption of the Risk.
Yeah, so meet us or meet me at DopeyCon. I don't think Mike will be there.
I haven't decided yet.
I will definitely be there. I've assured all of the dopes out there. They're going. I'm going. It's going to be a great time. We're going to see some monksters. I think we have some monksters attending.
What does Dave do at this thing? What does one do at a DopeyCon?
It sounds to me like he's going to have some of his celebrity guests show up. They may speak. I think he's going to do a show from stage.
I see.
He may have, and I don't want to give anything away because I don't know how much of this is surprising.
Right, so don't say.
There may be some other entertainment things. I know there's going to be some people exhibiting, like sponsors. Yeah, I think SoberLink said that they would have a exhibition. So so there'll be.
It's New York City, after all.
There might be a slight convention feel to it, but it's mostly just going to be like everyone getting together and meeting people that you sort of met in your recovery online, and so it'll be interesting because a lot of these people we all got to know each other during the pandemic because we were all looking for that connection and. it'll be really great. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of you there. Lastly, I really had something else.
You're riffling through those pages.
Okay. Anyway, thanks for listening. I had
Thank
a
you.
really great time. And
Did you? Yes, I did.
That about does it for today. I know had a great time. Did you?
I did.
Thank you so much for listening. Visit us at middleagesrecovery.com, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify,
All the usual
YouTube,
places.
and Twitter. So,
And
what you twit?
TikTok. I'm going to create the TikTok
And
account.
TikTok is coming. Support your favorite show. Please, guys, drop us a 5-star review. It really helps on Apple Podcasts. Check out our private Facebook group. It's completely free. You join. You talk to other Bunksters. We support each other. We celebrate Soberversaries.
It's groovy.
It is groovy. We've also got the Inner Sanctum at patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages for a higher level of support, video episodes, free merchandise. Come check us out. But the best way to help the show is how?
I think the best way to support the show is to share it with a friend. Tell all your friends. But more importantly than telling them, force them to leave us 5-star reviews and listen and subscribe on Apple iTunes and all the other venues, because those things make a big difference. As we get higher up in the search terms and the search results, better things happen. It gives us more opportunities to share the message.
Yeah, and thank you guys for sticking with us, and looking forward to some great shows coming up.
Yes, we are.
And as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
That's progresso, not the perfection.
See you next time.
Be good, cheese bags.
Thank you. Stay fresh.
All right, goodbye.